Good evening. I call to order this regular meeting of the Minnehaha County Planning Commission, and I will begin with a few introductory comments. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, please make sure that all cell phones have been silenced. Please note that tonight's Planning Commission meeting will be rebroadcast via CityLink and posted on the www.minnehahacounty.gov site for viewing by the general public. Any final action taken on the conditional use permit applications tonight will take effect 5 working days following this meeting, unless a written appeal of the Planning Commission's decision is filed in the Planning Office by Monday, October 2nd at 5 p.m. In the event of an appeal, the decision will be referred to the County Commission for a hearing on Tuesday, October 17th at or after 9 a.m. The affected parties will be notified of the meeting date, and meetings of the County Commission are held in this same room. Action taken on the rezoning application during the public hearing tonight is a recommendation that will be forwarded to the County Commission for another public hearing on Tuesday, October 24th at or after 9 a.m. Meetings of the County Commission are held in this same room. First on the agenda is public input. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? At this time, the Planning Commission will consider the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are perceived to be non-controversial and meet all of the requirements of the codes and regulations. The consent agenda will be acted on in one motion with no public hearing on the items unless a member of the public, the commission, or staff requests the item be removed from the consent agenda. The minutes from the August 28th, 2023 meeting are included in the consent agenda. Next, I'll read each item on the consent agenda and ask if there are any issues or comments from the Planning Commission or the audience. And if any member of the Planning Commission or the audience would like to be heard on the item, please raise your hand, and the item will be moved to the regular agenda to allow you to address the commission later in the meeting. Any items remaining on the consent agenda will be approved by the Planning Commission with the conditions recommended by staff. Item number 1 is the approval of the minutes of the August 28th, 2023 meeting. Item number 2 is conditional use permit 23-46 to exceed 2,400 square feet of accessory building area, requesting 6,400 square feet on the property legally described as Tract 1A, Hampton's Edition. It's in the Northwest Quarter, Section 27, Township 101 North, Range 48 West. That is in Split Rock Township. The petitioner and property owner is Austin Hatton. Location 26622 481st Avenue. Is there anyone from the audience or the Planning Commission or the staff that wish to be heard on this item? Item number 3 is conditional use permit 23-47 to allow a short-term rental on the property legally described as Lot 24, Country Gable Estates, Second Edition, Section 5, Township 101 North, Range 48 West. That's also in Split Rock Township. Petitioner and property owner is Stephanie Peterson. Location 8700 East Sunset Circle. Anyone from the staff or audience wish to be heard on this item? Item number 4 is conditional use permit 23-48 to exceed 3,600 square feet of accessory building area, requesting 8,680 square feet on the property legally described as the Southwest Quarter. There is an exception of Johnson's Tract 1 and except Assen subdivision, end of exception. Section 31, Township 103 North, Range 49 West. That's Severe Drop Township. Petitioner and property owners are John and Heather Cody. Location 25576 472nd Avenue. Anyone from the staff or audience wish to be heard on this item? Item number 5, conditional use permit 23-49 to transfer one building eligibility from the southeast quarter, the northwest quarter, to the northwest quarter, the northwest quarter, all in Section 23, Township 101 North, Range 51 West, that is in Wall Lake Township. Petitioner and property owner is Kenneth Milkey. Location 46423 265th Street. Anyone from the staff or audience wish to be heard on this item? Item number 6, conditional use permit 23-50 to transfer one building eligibility from the southwest quarter, the northeast quarter, to the west half. There's a vacant 467th Avenue, living adjacent, and the north 1,207.7 feet, the east 1,105.5 feet. There is an exception of H-1, and except the north 150 feet, the east 143 feet. That is the end of the exception. Northeast quarter, all in Section 30, Township 104 North, Range 50 West. That is in Burke Township. Petitioner and property owners are Stephen and Susan Welbig. Location 46689 248th Street. Anyone from the audience or staff wish to be heard on this item? Item number 7, conditional use permit 23-51 to allow a rubble dump, and that is a tree grinding operation on the property legally described as the north half, the northwest quarter. There is an exception of H-1 and R1, end of exception. Section 34, Township 101 North, Range 51 West, that is in Wall Lake Township. Petitioners, Mueller Pallets LLC, they're also the property owner. The location is at the intersection of 267th Street and 463rd Avenue. And it's approximately 1 mile south of Wall Lake. Anyone from the audience or staff? Okay, we will move that item to the regular agenda, and that's item number 7. Number 8, conditional use permit 23-52 to allow a Class 1 major home occupational is a firearms sale, that's in parentheses, on the property legally described as Lot 1, Irvine's Addition, Northwest Quarter, Section 13, Township 104 North, Range 52 West. That is in Buffalo Township. Petitioner and property owner is Tyrell Ellsworth. Location 24620 459th Avenue. Anyone from the audience or staff wish to be heard on this item? Okay, those are the items on the consent agenda. I had no response from the audience or staff except for number 7 to be moved to the regular agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing item 7 to the regular agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda except for number 7, which will be moved to the regular agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. If your item has been approved, you're free to go. We'll move on to the regular agenda. Guess we'll move on to item number 7. Mason?
Good evening, Commissioners. Mason Steffen from the County Planning Office. So this request is for a rubble dump or tree grinding operation from Mueller Pallets LLC. We've had several requests from them throughout this year, and this is the latest request. So the petitioner is requesting to operate a tree grinding operation as a rubble dump on the subject property. The narrative explains that the property will be used to collect trees, tree branches, dimensional lumber, and other non-treated wood from the public in order to grind the wood and move to an off-site location. The hours of operation listed in the narrative are Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Saturday, 7 a.m. to noon. The petitioner has explained that there will be a gated entrance on the property, along with a guard shack and security system. This request was sent to the County Highway Department for review, and they have stated to planning staff that they will not require a traffic study at this location in order for the operation to use the existing access onto the farmstead here on the very eastern portion of the site. That was one of the main issues that came up at Mueller Pallets' last request The Highway Department also explained that this recommendation is based on the fact that the permit will sunset in 10 years, and that if the traffic conditions change on this property enough in the 10 years, we can revisit it at that time. Staff did conduct a site visit on September 8th, and as I said, the property is, the petitioner is only requesting to use about 10 acres on the eastern edge of the property, but the entire property is approximately a 78-acre piece of property. The nearest non-ag use is this substation directly across the highway to the northwest, and the nearest residential use is over a half-mile away to the southwest down here on 463rd Street. And then finally, previously approved conditional use permits in the county for this type of land use have had sunset clauses that require new conditional use permits after 10 years, and therefore this one will also have that sunset clause in order to remain consistent. Excuse me. With all conditional use permits, we do look at 6 criteria for how they will impact or how they will impact the public. Number 1 is the effect upon the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the uses already permitted and upon property values. Almost all of the existing land uses in the area are for agriculture, and directly to the east is the existing Sioux Falls landfill. The nearest existing residential use, as stated, is over a half-mile to the southwest, so the proposed operation should not overly impact the use and enjoyment of this property. And finally, the property is accessed off of county highway, so any traffic increase to this property will be minimal compared to the existing traffic on the highway. Number 2, that the effect upon the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for use is predominant in the area. As stated, the predominant use is agriculture, and this would be located on an existing farmstead, so the use of a tree grinding operation on this farmstead will not affect the agricultural production in the area, and any development that does take place will be limited to the available building eligibilities. Number 3, that utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities are provided. The site plan indicates that the operation will use this existing access onto the property, and the petitioner will still be required to get an access permit from the Highway Department for the improvement of that access in order to use it for this operation, and all the other necessary facilities should be in place on the site. Number 4, that the off-street parking and loading requirements are met. With this type of operation, a majority of the traffic will be for deliveries, and as you can see on the site plan here, they do provide a turnaround point at the end of the driveway, which will allow for the trucks and other deliveries to the site to be able to turn around. And there is employee parking here to the northwest of the site, which will be plenty of parking for the proposed number of employees on the site. Number 5, that measures are taken to control offensive odor, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, and lighting, so that none of these will constitute a nuisance. The grinding of trees can produce noise and dust nuisances, but as explained, there is over a half-mile separation between the nearest residential use, and there are existing trees on the property, which will help to limit the dust leaving the site. Also, limiting the hours of operation will help limit the dust leaving the site as well. Number 6, that the health, safety, and general welfare of the public in the comprehensive plan. The health, safety, and general welfare of the public should not be overly impacted by the proposed operation. It is located approximately a half-mile west of the existing landfill and will provide citizens with a sustainable way to dispose of untreated wood products. Also, this property is located in the agricultural production area of the Envision 2035 comprehensive plan, and since this operation is located on an existing farmstead, it will not be taking any land out of the agricultural production area of the county. With that, I will just go through a few pictures here so we can see the site. So here's the existing, I'm standing on the driveway here, and this is looking to the southwest, and this would be the main location for where the piles would be, and you can see the existing shelter belt of trees on the property. This is looking to the east towards the landfill, so just over the horizon there is the access into the landfill. Here's just looking directly across the street, showing that there's no houses, and then this is looking to the northwest down to the substation along the highway. And then here's looking directly across, and I'll just go down to this one quickly. So this is looking at the property from the east back towards the property, and you can see the trees here. It's hard to see anything past those trees, so it is a pretty well-screened property. And with that, staff is recommending approval of conditional use permit 2351 with 11 conditions, and I am available for questions if you have them.
Becky?
Haven't we usually required the approach onto the highway to be paved so that gravel doesn't get brought up on the highway?
Sure. It's only required to be paved if the property is zoned commercial or industrial. So this is an ag-zoned property, so it's not a requirement in the zoning ordinance. If you wanted to put it as a condition of approval, you could, but it's not a requirement of the zoning ordinance.
Anybody else have any questions for him?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Doug.
Mason, about how long is that driveway going back?
Well,
Microphone, Doug.
Mason, how long is that driveway going back to the farmstead?
well, from the road to the end of the farmstead is a half mile, so it'd be between a half mile, about 3/4 of a mile to that turnaround point there. Because the very back edge of this property is would be the half section line, so somewhere in there.
Super, so there would be no truck or no traffic parked out on the highway then?
Correct. And that's also a condition, just that there's no parking in the public right of way.
Joe?
Madam Chair, Mason, can I just ask, we've been hearing about this potential operation a few different times now. I think this is the first I've heard of a sunset provision. Can you just give any background on where that came from and the
So
value
that's
of
been
that?
on.
That has been?
That's been on every one of theirs, yep.
Okay, I
So-
missed that.
Sure, so the condition number 10, that the operation will be allowed to operate under the conditions of this permit until September 30th, 2033. That condition's been on each one. that
And
they've
you
had.
mentioned that's been a standard on other similar operations we've done, some kind of sunset can be standard?
Yep, so Mueller Pallets has actually been approved for other tree grinding operations in the county with the same condition. And then the most recent one that we approved for tree grinding north of Sioux Falls in 2019 has the same condition. And it was also mentioned in the Del Rapids meeting that that recycling facility is a little different, but that one also had a sunset clause based on precedent, so.
Any other questions for him? Guess not. Is the petitioner here? Will you please step forward and state your name and address?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Paul Cheddar from the Boyce Law Firm here on behalf of the petitioner applicant, Mueller Pallets. Appreciate the questions already. Obviously, you are all familiar with this business operation. I'm certainly willing to answer questions. My client is here this evening as well, but I think the focus should be on answering questions you may have. I think that this is an ideal site. Concerns raised to you over the past several months by neighbors to the east, I think are addressed by moving this site a half a mile farther to the west. We are facing far less traffic as you get to the west of the landfill entrance. And I think that's reflected in the county's highway superintendent's recommendation that a traffic study is not needed because of the traffic volumes there. There are a couple of items I just want to raise that Mason commented on. I think the consistency in the land use is important. Back in the April meeting when we were here the first time around, Mason identified traffic studies and the traffic count of Mueller Pallets at about 40 cars a day. That was going to be an increase to traffic east of the landfill, or on that landfill entrance road, of under 3%, if you can recall that conversation. So if we're 3% of the traffic entering the landfill on 464, we're probably a higher percentage of additional traffic west of the landfill. But I think the more important number in thinking about traffic is the number of cars at 40 cars a day. So it's not a significant increase in traffic. We had a traffic count performed in the past couple of weeks. And while per day there are about 1,800 to 1,900 cars east of the landfill entrance, there are about 1,000 cars west of the landfill entrance. So extrapolating the math a little bit, let's round up and call the entrance to the east about 2,000 cars, and we were going to be 3% increase on the driveway. So we might be a 5 or 6% increase in traffic at the current site west of the landfill. I don't think that that's going to be a material concern as reflected by the the highway superintendent's requirements. We think that the movement to the west is a strong sign of good faith on the part of the Mueller Pallets, trying to find a solution in this neighborhood that makes sense and is reflective of a sensitivity to the traffic concerns and the dust and the noise issues raised. We think we'll demonstrate to the county and to the neighbors that we can be a good neighbor, and we look forward to answering your questions if you have any this evening.
Any questions for him?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Joe.
So one of I agree that some of the strongest concerns with the prior site was the traffic. So I think you've addressed a lot of that to my mind. One of the concerns I have, this seems like a pretty thick group of trees here, but I kind of see your operation maybe taking down some of those trees. Can you just describe the tree coverage, as we're seeing it now versus what will actually be there to shield anything?
Sure. My understanding and speaking with my client is the grove of trees on the west edge of the property, which is covered by the blue box there, but that grove of trees extends about to where the purple circle is, the cul-de-sac at the end of the road. That grove of trees will remain in place to provide windbreak from the north and west, and also to provide a screen. Trees along the east edge between the driveway and the fence line may be maintained. There may be additional trees planted there. It depends on, there's a farmyard, a silo, other outbuildings that have to be removed. But most of the trees that are in the center of the parcel will be removed to facilitate the wood grinding operation. And if I could make one comment, Madam Chair, as to one of the conditions, there is a state permit that allows grinding of wood that is stained and is varnished and is painted, and my clients may opt to pursue that permit from the state of South Dakota. So as to condition 3, we would ask that that condition be qualified, that we are permitted to do those things if we obtain the appropriate permit from the state of South Dakota. So it wouldn't fundamentally change our use in any way, but it would allow us to be a recycling location for other customers in the Sioux Falls market. Oftentimes, there might be a deck, for example, that has minimal stain on singular surfaces of the wood products, and with the right permit from the state of South Dakota, that's a product that we'd like to be able to recycle as well. It may not be reflected in the crowd tonight, but my clients have had a petition online for the last week or so, and it's obtained as of earlier today more than 500 signatures. I would estimate, based on my scan, 80–90% of them have Sioux Falls or local community addresses. So as is common in land use discussions, it's a relatively silent majority that thinks something is a good idea, and you hear from people that may think it's a good idea, but just not right here, which has been a common theme in this discussion over the past several months. But there is a sizable number of people that live in the community that recognize the value and service that this business provides, and that this site would be an appropriate site for this location.
Madam Chair,
ahead,
one
Joe.
other clarifying question for Mr. Cheddar. Just we still have the other site is pending before the county commission. We deferred that one to kind of line up procedurally with this one, and it's your client's position that you'd only need one or the other. Obviously, for this operation, you don't need both.
Correct.
And do you have a preference, I guess, to kind of put your client on the record of which one, and maybe just further compare and contrast the two locations for your business operation,
Yeah,
and which one would work better?
This site is preferred. This site was pursued earlier. The ownership of this site is a number of siblings at different locations around the country, and so we were not able to get this site secured as quickly as we were the other site, which is owned by Pine Knoll. They're a half mile to the east. This site is preferred, and our intention is to withdraw the conditional use permit that's pending before the county commission before it's heard on November 7th, if this permit is approved by this body, and ultimately if there's an appeal approved by the county commission. And I understand that meeting with the county commission would take place on the 17th of October. So my hope is that we're in a position to know what at least the final county action is on this site ahead of the November 7th County Commission meeting relative to the Pine Knoll site.
Okay, any other questions for him? Guess
Thank
not
you.
at this time. We may ask you to come back.
Thank you.
We got some
Appreciate it.
questions. Okay, anyone else like to address this item? You have some opposition? Please state your name and address. You will be allowed 5 minutes.
My name is Leanne Crins. We live at 26756 463rd Avenue in Hartford. We presently farm all the ground around this location here. One of the concerns we have is the dust that's going to go up and over and how it's going to affect the yields on our crop and how is it going to affect our pasture ground if it gets onto the grass and our cattle. And another thing is where they have the proposed site right against the road where they're going to put all the employee park and everything, we have that rented for next year, so I'm not sure how they're going to do that when we have permission to rent it next year. That's the question that I have. So they're not going to be able to touch it for at least a year, since we have a rental agreement with the present owners on it.
Okay, he'll have to come up and address that
Okay, that's all I
at
have.
some point,
Thank
okay?
you.
Anyone else opposition to this? State your name and address.
Dan Brandt, 467th, or I'm sorry, 46408 267th Street, Hartford. The proposed site has the wall lake overflow called Cherry Creek running along the edge of it. Cherry Creek flows south around the landfill and east towards Sioux Falls. It flows into Family Park and into Skunk Creek and finally into the Sioux River and eventually into the drinking water of Sioux Falls. All dust and contaminants will end up at Family Park and then into the Sioux River. How are they going to contain this and stop it from happening? Cherry Creek overflows and becomes a major river in the spring thaws and heavy rains, flooding the lowland next to the proposed site. Does Mueller Pallet have permission from the DNR to operate at this site because of this? And I know it was kind of addressed a little bit. How are they going to control the mud and rocks being tracked onto the highway? Mueller's own lawyer stated that they do not want to use gravel because the stones would get mixed up with the ground up wood. The landfill now takes road graders to scrape the mud off the landfill road and 267th Street in front of our house after it rains. This is after vehicles have traveled nearly a mile on hard surface roads. Mueller Pallets will only have 267th Street to lose the mud. The driveway for this proposed site also has a solid yellow line on the eastbound lane of 267th Street, making it a no passing zone according to coded law section 322637. This section of road has limited sight to the east. This is a traffic hazard for the westbound traffic without a turning lane. This site has the same traffic issues as the other proposed site to the east that was denied. It's just a half a mile farther west. The traffic from the west is just as bad as that coming from the east. Landfill traffic from the west comes from Hurley, Parker, Marion, Freeman, Salem, Hartford, Humboldt, Madison, and many other small towns. Even Brandon garbage haulers come in and out of the landfill from the west so they can avoid the Sioux Falls traffic. Mueller's lawyers had mentioned that they have considered 18 different sites. What's wrong with one of those? This site has way too many issues. Please deny Mueller Pallets from getting their conditional use permit. Thank you.
Get the overhead, please. Our way in, I have a paper to put on there, sure. There we go. So we go this way. Okay. Grant Edgecombe, 26685 Dayspring Circle, Hartford. I'm going to present our concerns. These are concerns about this location, and being further west doesn't dissipate any of the traffic concerns that we have. And we need these addressed. It's not our fears, as some people here have labeled us, and that we're not fearful of the unknowns by some others have labeled. And the quote that it's a perfect location is opposite of our opinion and our concerns. It's totally inappropriate on a road like this because of the traffic that it causes. So these are our concerns. According to the 1990 revised zoning ordinance, the regulations are designed to carry out the goals and the objectives of that plan, but especially to lessen congestion on the streets. Now, there's a magic number out there, 40 cars, and there's been 3 separate surveys that don't line up with any of the Muellers. We've had 200 to 250 number. The highway department, according to Steve Groen, they were at 160. So our numbers are way off on the amount of people, the vehicles coming that way. So this permit will not lessen traffic, it will increase traffic, violating the 1990 code, in our opinion. And that's one of our concerns. The traffic is coming from all directions, 41st Street and 12th Street, being the 2 main roads that come out of the city of Sioux Falls that don't turn into gravel like 57th and 26th. And when the storm traffic comes, and we all know it's coming, it's going to create even more congestion. And then not mentioned is the seasonal traffic for the Turney County Fair. They all use this road. From the middle part of Sioux Falls, Wall Lake Beach traffic, Game Fish and Parks ramp, Wildwater West traffic, adding hundreds of more vehicles. And then there's motorcycles being clocked at over 100 miles per hour. And the no passing zones being violated constantly. These are our experiences, they're our concerns. We've lived this. We have the traffic people do a snapshot of a traffic count, which the year is 365 days, and a traffic snapshot is a period of time, like 1 day or 2 days. And the traffic person that I talked to said, you're not getting a whole picture when you only do a little tiny snapshot. And then all of our memories you didn't lessen traffic with Life Light when you gave permission to do that. And we didn't think that was a very smart idea. And another idea might be to make 41st Street the an industrial gateway to the city. Beautiful and attractive, not according to the 2035 Envision plan that talks about the gateways to the city need to be attractive. So it's just, to us, our concern is it's a violation, a violation, a violation. Then I had code enforcement. So I asked for records on code enforcement, and I got no reply about code enforcement. And it's just 2 short paragraphs in the, did I do that wrong? Can't see it. Okay. There's just 2 short paragraphs about code enforcement. So I asked for code enforcement records, and I got none. So I started looking online, and I was looking for these questions, which you can't really see. And because I'm out of time, this is the information I found about code enforcement. Nothing. Training, nothing. All of the list that was displayed up on the deal that.
Microphone, sir.
Oh, yep, sorry. And all of the stuff that were on there, I didn't get anything. And in Lincoln County was the same because I researched their conditional use permit on that location.
That's 5 minutes.
Okay.
Anyone else care to address this item?
Chet Hofer, 26662 465th Avenue, Hartford. Fire is one of the dangers of the grinding in this area. Should a fire start, let's say in the fall, with dry corn all over and a south wind, and it gets in that corn, where's it going to go from there? The fire department that services the area is the Hartford Volunteer Fire Department, and they have to haul all their water to the fire. For example, when the city had a fire a few weeks ago, they tried to pump water out of Wall Lake and were not able to get any, so they had to drive clear to Sioux Falls and get some out of the city's hydrant. Also, the ambulance is a volunteer service out of Humboldt. And from experience, it was over 45 minutes to my home when I needed it. These folks have to leave their jobs and report to the station and then travel to the fire and/or injury. And I do absolutely not understand why there is no traffic study required for this plot when it's a half a mile to the west. You have eastbound traffic from many of the cities and the counties around the area going to the regional landfill and all crossing the trucks, entering and exiting the site. They then mix with the traffic trucks coming and going from the landfill. And whenever the traffic is mentioned, it's mentioned in cars. Cars don't haul logs and branches to this grinding facility. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Hi, my name is Zach Marcus, 26748 463rd Avenue. I am the location that will be in closest proximity to this. I've got concerns about dust and noise pollution. I live at that property. It's about 1,000 yards from my house with my family. I've got experience in the mining industry where permitting, monitoring, and mitigation plans were well thought out and evaluated by all affected parties. One of the purposes of this zoning process is to identify proper locations for particular construction and activities. Utilizing the conditional use permit is allowing Mueller to bypass those permitting and pre-work evaluations, be they safety, environmental, or community related. The proper process for this, in my eyes, is to rezone it as industrial, and then the proper steps can be taken to address these issues as they're raised. As far as my personal property value and quality of life, one of the deciding factors in the purchase of that property was the peaceful location, quiet country living. If that plant site is there and the map is indicating that all of those trees are gonna be gone because you can't operate within that little purple circle, if we could pull that back up. I don't know if that's possible. The color-coded site, yeah. So the teal is the proposed stockpiling location. And there's no definition of what is actually going to be left. And if they're saying that's going to be their stockpile, that's indicating straight to the property lines. If there's something different, we need a new site plan so we can evaluate the specifics of that. If they're saying they're going to leave that wood, where are they gonna stack their material? My house, as I said, is directly to the southeast. From my back deck, if they remove all those trees, I'll direct line of sight and all that sound will come straight to me. I've got a family. I enjoy outdoor living. That's why we live where we are. I don't want all that dust, all that noise pollution drifting my way. I've got kids. I don't want stained or treated materials and dust affecting our property. OSHA, which I have experience with MSHA, but OSHA is a similar type of regulatory agency. They have specific requirements for their employees and permittable dust leaving the site. So are those factors being taken into account? Is there going to be monitoring? Is it going to be Wild West until we make complaints? Will those complaints be taken seriously? Will a true study be done? All these things, I believe, can be addressed when the proper zoning process takes place, and we can look at rezoning it as industrial, not bypassing the system that we're supposed to be using and giving conditional use. So my concerns, I hope, are valid, and I urge you to decline this conditional use permit. Thank you.
Glenn Furstenberg, 46524, 267th Street, Sioux Falls. So I'm just going to read what I listed out here, and also I'm going to need this thing set up here too. Can you just pull up that picture you had up here just first? First of all, that driveway is not 3/4 of a mile long. It's only 1/4 mile on that picture. It's not 3/4. Also, their dimensions do not add up. That 450 feet times 1,250 feet ends up being 13 acres, and they're only applying for 10 acres. The math is not there. So I just want to bring those 2 points up first. And so I want Mr. Cheddar or Ms. Miller to address that. And then I'll just read through this. While I'd rather not do this type of public speaking, I feel it's my civic duty to do it. I almost feel like it's my second job. I've been here many times. And I feel like it's my second job to see to that the general public stays safe on this highway. I feel that strong about it. Having said that, I would like to bring up a few points that need to be addressed with this application in front of you. Someone once told me, you never want the facts to get in the way of a good story. Even though I feel that Mr. Cheddar is doing a great job representing his client with a limited amount of studies, researching, or engineering on the proposed location, he has certainly given out a story that is convincing to the audience he is speaking to. He is paid to do this service, and I'm sure he will say anything to get his client the results they're wanting as long as he is paid to do it. Staff seems to be convinced of the proposed site without taking all the facts into account. Therefore, we are stating many of the facts pertaining to this application for this rubble grinding operation. The county highway that this business wants to turn off from has a full width of 28 feet. And that's where I'd like to put this picture out. And if we can get in here. So it's a full width of 28 feet. And then also has like an inch or 1.5 feet of gravel shoulder per side. It also boasts a slope of a 25-degree angle to the bottom of the ditch. Pictures don't show it real well because the grass is tall. If that grass was mowed, you'd see the slope to the ditch. And also, and then I want to show you this picture here too. I took a picture of, again, this is the driveway of the proposed site. And as you can see, at the top of that picture, car coming over that hidden drive, or I'm standing in a hidden driveway. That car is going up that hill, and that's as far as you can see. Then the car goes out of sight. So obviously when traffic comes the other way, that's when you can start seeing that. I'm sorry, did I not get that? Okay.
There you go.
Now I will show you pictures of State Highway 42, which is directly 2 miles north. That's a crow flies. And if you can tell there, State Highway 42 boasts a 40-foot paved surface from outside to outside. It has a 9-foot paved shoulder surface. Also, the ditch has a 12-degree slope and is much wider than a typical county road ditch. Turn lanes are also included in all intersections and many of the businesses along the highway. The decline of the ditch on this highway where the proposed operation would take place would be especially dangerous on icy conditions. County highway is almost half the width of a state highway and twice the slope to the bottom of the ditch. When installing a new driveway approach, county requires no more than 18-degree slope. I know from experience, I just put one in. The proposed site has limited vision because of the hidden driveway that Mueller wants to use. In the wintertime when roads are icy, traffic coming over the hill will have no time to react to someone waiting to make a left turn into their driveway. In that unfortunate situation, with the slope and the ditches and the narrow road, they would have no choice to take the other lane and hope there is no one coming for a head-on collision. Someone else addressed natural disasters. And then while the weather has been extremely dry for the last couple of years, this pattern is not normal. Usually there is mud from the road, from the landfill and others. This mud can last for many days until it's wore off the vehicles driving on it. If we get normal or above normal amount of rain, the mud is there all summer long. Mueller's proposed site would add to this. 10 years ago, there was a cement grinding operation that wanted to set up shop in that same vicinity. They were denied because of safety and
That's
traffic.
5 minutes.
Can't finish?
If you
About
have.
1 minute.
All right.
Got 1 minute. Because of safety and traffic. The only thing that has changed since this traffic has increased, the only thing that has changed since then is the traffic has increased tremendously. If safety and traffic concerns were a factor then, why wouldn't it be now? I am for Mueller's to keep running their business, just not anywhere on this busy highway. If approved, I would like the conditions to include the following: gravel or paved surface throughout to ensure that no mud gets back on the highway. There will be many trucks driving into Mueller's for drop-off branches. The back duals will be trucks will no doubt be packed with mud upon entering the highway, and the mud will drop off onto the highway as they pick up speed. I want to inspect in the proposal, or in you guys' plan, you wanted inspections done with approval or with notice. I would like inspections done without notice. Also would like to impose severe fines and penalties if they're not doing what they're supposed to do. That's if you approve this. And I just want to, the last thing I want to say is that, we as residents are about, I would say 40 members strong. We feel strongly about the safety on this road. We're not going to end this thing. We are in for the long haul. We want to see to that this thing gets stopped. We care that much about our highway. We don't want to peel people off the road because of more and more industry coming onto that highway. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Diane Runge, 46473 267th Street, Hartford. So this weekend, through the Hartford on Facebook, they had so much support of Mrs. Mueller and their company. I'm thinking they need to move that to Hartford, put it in their industrial area. They already have all this support and wouldn't have to go through this for another 3-4 months. So I would think that would be a great place for them to move it. They obviously have the support of the people there. And the other one I would like, there has to be a condition if the city dump has to have everything tarped, then they need everything tarped. I wouldn't think that they were any important than anybody else going down the road that is bringing their product so it's not flying all over. And they've always said that's their money. They don't want to lose any. So then tarping would be good for them. It would be good for us. And just need some conditions that they're going to have to hold up their end on if they end up getting in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, I'm going to turn it back over to the petitioner. Paul, would you like to come up and can you address any of these items that were questioned?
I'll certainly do my best. All of the traffic that would come to Mueller Pallets has already been coming to the landfill since May 22nd. And Mueller Pallets operating at the proposed site would actually decrease the trucks that are driving from this area to the Poet ethanol plant because the Mueller trucks hold, is it 6 times? 5 to 6 times the size of the trucks the city is currently hauling out of the landfill. So there'll be a reduction in the heavy truck traffic with approval of this site. I think my client has satisfied the requirements to obtain an approved conditional use permit. I believe that the concerns that have been raised have been addressed. The traffic safety concerns that Mrs. Randall raised last month at the other site, I think are addressed at this site. I trust the highway superintendent to make a good decision and a good recommendation to this body as to what is appropriate, whether or not a traffic study is necessary. For all of those reasons and those outlined by Mason, I would ask that you would approve this conditional use permit with the revision to condition 3 that I mentioned earlier tonight. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have this evening.
Madam Chair.
Doug?
I'd just like to clarify, how many employees will be there for parking?
Sure. 2 to 3, I'm told.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for him?
Madam Chairman, you wanted to ask about the land lease issue and being able to use that for a year.
Yeah, I view that as a private matter between the contract between the current tenant and the current landlord. I don't think that the bearing of the lease or existence of a lease or non-existence of a lease has anything to do with the conditional use permitting process, but that's something that will have to get resolved between the landlord and the tenant.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just one more.
Go ahead.
Back in April, when he first came, it was gonna be like once a week, a month. That's still your plan then?
So it's been consistent. It's about 6 to 9 days a month that we're there in operation. So that's going to be just as it was proposed at that site farther to the east. Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions for him?
I'll have one other question.
I'm sorry, if I could just clarify one thing for this commissioner. We'll be accepting wood during normal operating hours, but we'll only be there grinding 6 to 9 days a month.
That's why I just wanna make sure.
Yep.
And on those 6 to 9 days, if it was too windy, they would not be grinding, correct?
That is correct.
Because they would be losing their product.
Correct.
Thank
And
you.
that's why they want to maintain the shelter belt at that location, because they want to minimize the impact of any wind on their operations. So if it's too windy, they will not operate.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for him?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can you go into more detail on what goes into the state of South Dakota permit? You're asking us to consider an amendment to condition number 3. What all goes into that? And I just kind of want to understand what checks and balances that if we give you the green light, what's the state of South Dakota have to say about it?
Yeah, the DANR has a specific permitting process based upon the type of operation that you are functioning or operating. So different landfills have to get state permits to treat or grind or process certain products. There are certain permits that are required. So the Muellers would need to satisfy those requirements initially to get the permit, and then there's ongoing requirements of maintaining the condition of their site and satisfying those conditions going forward. So it would actually add another layer of protection to the residents, that it's another governmental entity that has oversight of this location, so that if there are problems or concerns, it's another phone number they can call to activate someone who may address their concerns or answer their questions.
Okay, I follow that, but is this a new business venture, or why is this aspect just coming up now?
Recent conversations with personnel and peer revealed that it's not a permit that they've been requiring of processors. but it's something that, and typically it's not obtained by wood processors or recyclers, but it's available. And so in order to maintain the highest degree of conformance with the requirements, they're voluntarily seeking that permit. Their operations to date have likely not satisfied the minimum threshold where that permit would be required, but they're affirmatively pursuing that to be a good neighbor and be a good industry participant.
Any other questions for him? Pardon me? No.
One other question that was raised, if I may speak to the Cherry Creek. I'll defer to Mason, but my understanding is that there are no DANR permits required for water purposes. That waterway is not on the property that the Mueller Pallets site will be located on. It's on the adjacent parcel. But it will not, we don't anticipate it to impact that waterway in any way. Our former site south of the T exit had a similar waterway to the south, about 1/8 of a mile, and there were never any issues there. Likewise, the former site was completely surrounded by ag production acres, and they never received a complaint from the farmer that their operations were impacting yield or his farming operations in any way at that location. So I don't expect that to be a problem here either.
Anyone else have any questions for him?
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Smith. I reside at 4900 South Kalen Place in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'm the commercial real estate agent that has been working with the Muellers to try to find a location for them to operate their wood yard from. I've got a couple of pieces of information that I feel would still be pertinent for the commission to consider. I've got print-offs here if you would like to have print-offs of what I'm going to be showing. So what's being handed out here is a measurement that I took today from the Minnehaha County website to show the distance from the closest two residences to the north and to the east from the current location where the city is grinding wood at their landfill and the location where the Muellers will be grinding wood at this proposed site. The distances from the two closest residences are greater for the Muellers wood site than they are to the current location where the city is already grinding wood. I'd like to address a few of the objections that were voiced this evening. When we're talking about any wood dust or noise pollution, any pollution that the Muellers are going to be creating would already be noticeable by the landfill currently grinding wood a very similar distance away, even closer to these homes than where the Muellers will be grinding wood. And when it comes to fire issues, I mean, that any non-flammable material can start on fire. That doesn't mean that it's a risk. There have been plenty of combines that have had issues where bearing goes out and it starts on fire and it burns up part of a cornfield. Those kind of things happen in the fall. That doesn't mean that this wood grinding business should not be allowed to operate in this location. This location is a half a mile away from any residence. I've looked for 6 months. It is extremely difficult to find a location that has existing trees, thick existing trees, and is a half a mile or more away from any residence. Now, it's unfortunate the way that picture was drawn in the CUP application for the site plan, The Muellers told me specifically that they wanted to have trees on site to block wind, and that the row of trees on the west side of this 12.7 acres that they're considering purchasing and wanting to purchase for this location is a thick, heavy tree belt that is going to provide significant amount of protection from the wind. One of the complaints that we got from some of the neighbors in the last location was that the tree belt wasn't thick enough, it wasn't healthy enough, it wasn't going to do enough. Well, this tree belt is very thick and healthy, and it's going to do a great job of blocking wind. And the Muellers specifically told me in the time that I was looking for a location for them that they wanted to make sure that there was as much wind protection as possible. So they're not going to take those trees out. They're going to take out trees, where in the center of that strip of land, but they're not going to take out the trees on the west side. And that's where the prevailing winds are from the northwest. That's where the majority of the wind issues are going to come from. Grand Edgecombe came up and made statements about how this is not a good site because of all the traffic that heads out to the Turner County Fair and other places southwest of here. As we go further to the southwest, which is where a significant portion of the Mueller's wood gets hauled to the Chancellor Ethanol Plant, the trucks would still have to drive down these same exact roads to get to a location that's further to the south and west. And if these folks are successful in blocking the Mueller's ability to be able to operate their business, they're going to end up having all the same wood hauled down all the same roads in all the same trucks to the landfill. There was a representative from the city a few meetings ago that said there are only two places to take wood refuge and dispose of it. The landfill, where you have to pay to dispose of it, and the Mueller's wood yard, where you can drop it off for free. Now, if the Muellers aren't in operation, all the same wood is going to come down all the same roads and be dropped off at the landfill, and all the same traffic concerns are going to be there. And the thing is, these folks have had a hard time with people not taking care of the trash that they're hauling out to the dump. The trash is falling off. They have to pick it up in their ditches. I understand why they're upset, but those aren't problems that the Muellers have created. Those are existing problems from the landfill. Now, it makes more sense to have two similar operating type of businesses.
That's 5 minutes.
In a close location, so that any of those kind of problems can be addressed in that same vicinity.
Okay, anyone else? Before I close the floor? This will be the last one.
Diane Edgecombe, 26685 Day Spring Circle. What I don't understand is why Mueller Pallets ever left their existing location.
I can
They-
answer that question if you'd like.
No, I'd like
Nope,
to speak
you cannot.
first. Thank you. In my opinion, they need to go back to that location. They had this established location near T. People knew and know where they are located. The business was located on a gravel road, a half a mile or more off of a highway. They were located in the middle of a field. They already have a gate there. There's a shelter belt there. There's a gravel road already established back to their grinding area. It's all there. And the land is still for sale. We called and checked on that. None of the road studies would have to be made. The road would not have to be widened. None of the updates would have to be made. No driveways, no guard shack, no signs, no lit signs, no gate, nothing would have to be completed. She's already lost a large amount of money by being shut down since May. A lot of the numbers just aren't adding up. She said she started out with 3 semis a day, and now it's 10 semis a day. The proposed 40 cars per day that Mr. Cheddar is saying is going to come into our landfill will not fill 10 semis a day. There's just no way. So there's just a lot of numbers. Those are just a few of the numbers that just aren't adding up. And I just don't understand why she wants to disrupt an entire community of over 400 plus people. That's just the nearby community. Why disrupt the whole community when she can go back to an area? She'd have 160 acres that she could develop however she wants. They can do light industrial, they can do commercial there. They can do residential, it can be a mixed area. I just don't understand why she wants to come to our area. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the floor. Mason, will you come back? The number 3 that they had suggested to be changed on the recommendations. I'm concerned if that's even necessary.
Changing number 3?
Yes.
If the commission would want to change number 3 to require them to have the state permit in order to accept that, you could, but otherwise, I guess that's a decision you can make. But as
Okay.
of now, our recommendation is based off of only clean untreated wood, and that is, same with the sunset clause, based on precedent. The other tree grinding operations that have been approved in the county have only been allowed to accept the clean untreated wood, but in this case, if they have the additional state permit, maybe you could allow that, but.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for him? Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
Mason,
Doug.
let's get clarified on how long that driveway is.
Quarter mile.
Quarter mile, thank you.
Yes, earlier I said it was a half section line down to here and then said 3/4 of a mile. I meant a quarter mile, so that was just a slip of the tongue, but.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I think the biggest concern here is traffic, and I kind of agree with somebody else said that a lot of this traffic's already on this road. So I would tend to be in support of this here tonight, so.
Madam Chair, I totally agree with what Ryan just said. You know, traffic is there. What about future building sites to the west? That's going to add more traffic also. Do you not want any development to the west? Well, homes are still traffic, probably at least 2 cars.
You're out of order.
So I'm in favor of this, of conditional use 23-51.
Any other commissioners have any comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may.
Mike?
Not to continue to echo the same thing, but I guess I am a little concerned about number 3 changing that. I would like that probably remain as stated per staff recommendation, but beyond that, I am in support of this.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve item 7, conditional use permit 23-51.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve, let's see here, conditional use permit 23-51. Any further discussion? I'm going to do a roll call vote on this. Ryan?
Yes.
Doug?
Yeah, I just want one thing clarified. On number 3, now, how do we want that to be stated?
My motion was to remain as is
Remain
per
as
staff
is.
report.
Yes, in favor.
Okay, Becky?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Okay. That item has been approved. Okay, we'll move on to stuff. Item number 8, item number 9, rezoning 23-06 to rezone from A1 Agricultural District to the Rural Residential District, the Prairie View Estates Edition in the west half, northwest quarter, Section 36, Township 101 North, Range 51 West, that is in Wall Lake Township. Petitioner is Isaac Decker, located in the southeast corner of 465th Avenue and 267th Street intersection. Kevin?
Hello, I'm Kevin Hookman from the County Planning Department. This request is a rezoning request from A1 Agricultural to RR Residential. And the request involves 6 properties. It's shown on the map, and has many property owners. The properties range in size from nearly 4 acres to over 11 acres in size. Most of the properties in the request have road access onto Lorraine Circle, which is a privately maintained road right here. The subject subdivision is located approximately 3 miles to the west of Sioux Falls at the intersection of 465th Avenue and 267th Street. The area includes many subdivisions similar to this. The zoning request of the properties from A1 to RR does not follow density zoning. The existing 6 lots here were developed through a transfer of building eligibilities in 2002. The property owner who transferred these building eligibilities still owns the remaining approximately 220 acres of agricultural farmland where the building eligibilities came from. A major goal of density zoning is to limit development and preserve farmland. This request does not limit development. I will say it does necessarily preserve agricultural land because it's already developed. So it does one of the 2 requirements of the density zoning. If approved, lots can be further subdivided into smaller lots with minimum acres of 1 acre to allow a house. If approved, it is unlikely that further subdivision will result in a density of 1 house per acre, though. This is likely because the minimum lot width requirement, for example, is 125 feet wide, and there's just not enough wide spaces along these roads to have those long widths. Otherwise, access easements could be used, in which case it is unlikely access easements will be used on all property owners. And then also I will note that there's a large low-lying area here and throughout some of the other properties that would probably limit further growth if approved. If the rezoning request is approved, new property access will be needed for driveways. The County Highway Department and Wall Lake Township require driveway permits and have policies for both to limit the number of driveways per mile of road. So new parcels may have to share access if they're going to be accessing onto either the highway or the county township road. Otherwise, they would have to do access onto Lorraine Circle. During the application process, the petitioner explained that he intended to split one of the parcels to allow an additional dwelling. I will note that this request is a fairly common request throughout the county. Several examples of recent rezoning requests by single property owners have been denied by the county commission in recent past. In July of 2022, a similar request was denied adjacent to Songbird Acres, where a request for, I believe it was about 7 acres, was requested to be divided into 5 lots next to a residential subdivision. Most recently, the county commission denied a rezoning request in Logan Township on August 1st of this year. Goal number 2 of the growth management section of Vision 2035 states that the county should discourage rural residential development in agricultural production areas. Staff is concerned of approval rezoning because this may lead to similar requests. And I'll bring up that slide here. So here's a slide of just some examples of similar properties of groupings of building eligibilities. In which case, the current request is right here. And there's several easily found examples of large acreage site subdivisions. Any one of these subdivisions could band together or individually ask for a rezoning request similar to this. Staff is recommending denial of the rezoning request 2306 based on the 2035 comprehensive plan and past recommendations of the properties. I'll go through the photos here now. So I'll work through them kind of backwards here. This is a view from the entrance of the driveway looking north to the stop sign along the highway. And this is looking to the west from that entrance. This is towards the end of the cul-de-sac, towards the low-lying land, in between the houses there, at the end of the cul-de-sac. This is an undeveloped lot as it currently sits. If it was approved, this lot could be divided into 3 different residential parcels. Then this is the entrance into the Lorraine Circle. This is from the stop sign looking down. You can see the tree grove here along the one lot. The entrance is located right here. And there's the plan. And again, the recommendation is for denial, and I am here for any questions.
Any questions for him?
Sure. So I'm kind of hearing from you that not much can functionally change. So I guess I'm having a little bit of trouble with the denial recommendation here because, and I know I get the slippery slope argument of some of the others, and we can go deeper into that. But I hear you telling me that this is already essentially developed in the sense that there's no agricultural use. It's not disrupting any agricultural use. But some of the arrangement of the lots really won't end up with many more houses here. So I guess I'm having trouble with, other than the slippery slope and other impacts across the county. But as to this one area, I just don't see that we're making much of an impact either way here. Can you maybe further that thought or expand upon that for me?
Sure. So further in the staff report, I note that we're recommending denial in part because I'm working from the staff's perspective in Vision 2035, past recommendations. And also, I did not note when my presentation, but as we discussed in, I think it was the last meeting, that we will be working on updates to the comprehensive plan. If furthering more subdivisions type this as an idea, that should probably be brought up in the comprehensive plan and amended in going forward with that. So I guess that's where we were going with this.
Madam Chairman, could I just add, I think we need to focus on the fact that all of these lots were created through eligibility transfers. So I think you need to look at the precedent that you could be sending because this is really a backdoor way of just creating a new subdivision where you could transfer a building eligibility to a 10-acre parcel and then come back and say, well, I want to rezone this 10-acre parcel to rural residential, now I want to have 10 lots. And so you can maximize any of your building eligibilities by doing that. And I think it's a fairness issue that these lots were all created with building eligibilities that were moved, and now we're opening the door to say, well, you can move a building eligibility to a smaller parcel and then just continue to subdivide it. So that's my concern with this.
Get your question answered?
That was helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Guess not at this time. Is the petitioner here? Will you please step forward? State your name and address.
Isaac Decker, 4750 East 54th Street, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'd like to open up with a couple things. I have written a small speech here just to kind of convey my thoughts and my family's thoughts on how this is going to happen, but a couple things right off the cuff. That cul-de-sac is privately maintained by my father and basically my father alone. So if we're worried about anything of extra use on that cul-de-sac, that is something we are already taking care of, and we would be happy to do so in the future. And as we know, the current state of our world and quite frankly our current economy is the housing market isn't fantastic for people who are starting off with new families and trying to get new homes. We have looked inside Sioux Falls and it is just, I mean, frankly discouraging on trying to live inside Sioux Falls and get a house that is reasonably priced. I mean, on average, we're looking 40 to 50,000 increase on houses compared to previous years. I know that is a product of current situations in the world and it may alleviate itself, but not in a time frame that we would all like. So going on that slippery slope, I think things should be handled on a case-to-case basis. I don't think we should be making blanket statements for all subdivisions. I mean, every instance has its own regulations and impacts of its current area and its each individual area. So I don't think we could be setting precedents other than, yes, this has happened and should encourage people to exercise their civic right of being able to further expand their lots if they so wish. So I will read my little speech here just to kind of give you my thoughts on everything. So I'd like to start off by saying thank you for everyone on your time on this matter. I know it's been a long night with everything going on here. My family built their home at Prairie View Estates in 2003, moving 1 mile away from their previous home in Country Acres. My aunt and uncle, who also live in that Prairie View Estates, is that vacant lot. So on top of that, I know they have no wishes to subdivide their land. That is where they're going to be building their future home when they move from Inca Estates. So I think we can just make that null and void as it sits. They live roughly 2,000 feet away. My cousin and his wife and their family live a mile away in Country Acres. I give you this information to highlight a key point in my proposal: distance to family. So my wife and I want to rezone Prairie View Estates to be closer to family. Now I understand I am not the first one who's wanted to rezone some land near this subdivision. I understand that I am not the first to be denied with this. So a couple key points in the report filed by staff member Kevin Hookman, am I correct in that? Okay. Were as follows: not wanting to remove existing farmland to turn into residential areas, which Chairman Joe has already kind of commented on. Preserving the regulations of density zoning and rule number 2 of the growth management section of Envision 2035 comprehensive plan. I want to briefly touch on those points as stated in Mr. Hookman's report. My rezone would not remove any existing farmland from production, so we can just get that out right away. Tying into rule number 2 of the growth management section of the Envision 2035 comprehensive plan, which states discourage rural residential development and agricultural production areas. Going back to the county's report, they had stated that, quote, the request will not remove any agricultural land out of production, end quote. My rezone to petition this change is the pre-existing 34.33 acres that make up the Prairie View Estates subdivision from A1 Ag to rural residential. The major change being going from 1 house every 5 acres to 1 house per 1 acre. I want to make it clear that I completely agree with guidelines of not wanting to overpopulate the area. However, Sioux Falls is expanding at an extortionate rate, and people need places to live. And people who have grown up with the privilege of living outside of city norms, we like our country area and be able to do what we want without the fear of neighbors kind of looking over our shoulder too much, being surrounded by houses on every corner, and especially with young kids growing up. You know, there's a lot of stuff that happens when you're in the middle of town. We like to think we live in a really safe area, and I think we do, but I think that level of safety kind of extrapolates when you go outside of city limits into your own little cozy development that you've created with your neighbors that you like to call your little extended family. We all help each other when we need it, and I do believe that kind of trend will continue. Going on another quote here, it is unlikely that the approval of the zoning request will result in a density of more than 1 house per 1 acre of land. And then he had listed all of the other requirements in that area. So yes, it was originally proposed for just 1 house every 5 acres, but that was in 2002. We're in 2023. Times are changing. People need places to live, and Sioux Falls is a nice area to live. But living outside of town has many, many benefits to a young, growing family, especially so close to their extended family. So I know I'm out of time here, but I just want to say thank you to everyone in your consideration of letting us start a little family out by our pre-existing family. So thank you. Any questions? Is that how this works? Or
Questions for him?
I would, Madam Chair.
Joe?
Can you just walk us through that plan there and what your vision for, obviously, each one of those homes now used a building eligibility to get there.
Correct.
If we went to rural residential, you could put as many as 1 per 1 acre. What do you see as the logical dividing up? How many homes do you think could end up here realistically?
roughly, I mean, so my parents' house, which is just to the south of the Lorraine Circle cul-de-sac.
Okay.
On the bottom side of that, there is a tree grove that is surrounded on all 4 corners minus the west side, and that is where we would propose a proposed driveway. If that is not in line with the county specifications, we are prepared to make a easement on the west side of that building. It is already rock and is just kind of like extra log storage from trees that die. So we have no problems of making that a driveway if we need to. Yeah, and like I said, to the north of that cul-de-sac is my uncle's lot, and they have expressed to me that they have no, yes, correct, that one, no wish to subdivide that in the future, because they plan on putting their house there, which they now live in Country Villa Estates, and it's just getting too small for the amount of family that is now coming in. They have a lot of extended family, so they need a bigger house to house some more family events. To the right of that, our neighbor Tim, and he has expressed he would like to subdivide that if possible. Going into, if you go more than 3 acres, you can have an accessory building. So I think that would be a selling point for most people trying to buy this land. If you have 3 acres included, you can put an external building up. If you just sell 1 acre, you're stuck with what you got. So I think we could even decrease the amount of potential homes in that area even further based upon the selling point of, hey, if you buy 3 acres of this, you can have another building for an extra storage of what most, I believe if not all, minus the one to the south there, already have an external building. So keeping in line with kind of how the area is already developed, I think most people would opt for that option. So living out of town is generally a luxury. Some people unfortunately cannot afford. But with what it is, I believe it's going to bring nice buildings and nice homes to this already nice and eye-catching area. So to south of that, that is Chad. I know he has not expressed, one up, yep, right there. I know he has not expressed to subdivide any further. But if he does, I mean, realistically, we could fit 1 or 2 in there, maybe. And I'm not sure anyone would really want to live behind someone when they have to use the split of an easement driveway there. And then to the south of that, Brian, I know he has expressed he wanted to subdivide. However, he is affected most by that already pre-existing wetland, which as you all are well aware, you cannot cut it up, you can't change it, you can't dump in it. So, I mean, how his land is set up, he may be able to fit 1 or 2 in there, excuse me. But really, with him having the largest plot size by a long ways, I don't think he's gonna be able to benefit a whole lot from that of getting more than 1 or 2 houses in there. And then the very last one there, which would be parcel 6 on the southeast corner there, his house is set up directly in the middle. So if they wanted to use an easement between what would then be my proposed property and then to the north of his tree line there to get a house behind there. But I think really you could fit 1 or 2 behind there as well. So I don't think we're asking to make this into a flourishing giant community. I think we can maybe fit a total of maybe 5 houses in there total. So I think, I don't think we're looking at too big of a population density overhang. Because there just isn't the room to fit that many houses. But there is the room to fit some more houses for people who want to start a nice country life.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, Madam Chair, we kind of get into some of the paradoxes and how we have to square the circle in our, as we move forward with our comprehensive plan, as we change that, we get into some of the paradoxes of we want density zoning, but then at the same time, we value the building eligibilities, so then we don't want you to build more houses. So there's kind of this catch-22, and I'm trying to navigate that on this particular issue. I also am sympathetic to the case-by-case basis, but also have been on this long enough to know that this can trigger some other requests that will also be had to take on a case-by-case basis, and a broader rule of principle does come in handy. I just wanted to ask a follow-up question too on an item that was in our packet. Looks like, did you distribute this to your neighbors?
Yes, I did.
Can you
Yep.
just describe the relationship with your neighbors, and maybe some of them are here to also testify today?
Absolutely,
In,
yeah.
in support or opposition in one way or another, but it looks like you have some support from neighbors. Can you just talk us through that?
Correct, yes. So, like I said, to the north is going to be my uncle. So no opposition there. You know, more family the better in my mind and in our family's mind. To the east of that, Tim, he has been we are the 6 minus the 1 on the bottom left there. We are the originals of that land. So we have from 2002 and growing up as children, and them other having children growing up with as well, we have grown into a nice little family. Just even 3 weeks ago, we were pouring a new concrete pad on the driveway there at my parents' house, and my dad had called Chad, one of the neighbors there, and said, "Hey, we're pouring concrete. Mind come help?" "Absolutely, I'll be right over. Let me know when." So it's a good standing relationship, and especially with us taking care of that cul-de-sac. When it snows, Dad's out there. Doesn't matter what time of day, what time of night. If he's got time and there it needs to be taken care of, we're out there taking care of it. We have a Bobcat with a plow, and we are totally prepared to keep upholding that same value of, hey, we all use the cul-de-sac. Let's keep it nice for each other.
Thank you.
So maybe I could also just chime in and further clarify for Commissioner Kipley. So as part of the application, every property owner needs to sign the application, and this is actually the supplement that shows that each of the property owners signed acknowledging that they were rezoning their property. So it's basically an addendum to this application.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So that's maybe what that's to clarify what this is for. It signifies that every property owner acknowledged that the rezoning request and agreed to participate in rezoning this.
If I may add something on that, I did include, and I don't have a copy with me, and I apologize, I did include a copy of a proposed plan of everything that it includes, as opposed to what taxes will do, land taxes, what you can and can't do, and it is totally up to the landowner's decision if they want to subdivide or if they don't want to. So everyone was very well-informed on this. I didn't just tell them, hey, we're signing an application, just put your name here, good to go. I included a full packet. It was about 2 or 3 pages long with pictures, and they all have our family's phone number, so if they had any concerns, they were more than welcome to come and address me with them, so.
Anyone else have any questions for him? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience care to address this item? Okay, I guess I'm going to close the floor. Commissioners? I'll entertain a motion.
I guess, Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
As I sit here, I want to think about this as a land use, and I want to think about it logically versus emotionally, because I do understand the desire to want to live out in the country, and the opportunities are quite limited right now for just what's for sale and what things are costing right now, unfortunately. When I look at this, I do also want to consider the logical side of it, and the fact that this subdivision really was created with eligibilities previously, and that was consistent with what we've always kind of carried here as far as how those residences are established. And then I take a step back and say, well, where does it stop? I know it's case by case, but there is precedence, and what precedents are we setting here? So where I'm going with that is, if someone has 2 eligibilities and puts it in the corner of the field and says, hey, I got 40 acres with 2 eligibilities, I want to subdivide it into 40 parcels now. And I think that's a dangerous precedence to set. As much as I would like to approve this, 'cause I think that the motivation here truly is genuine, I can't support this particular item. So I guess with that, I'll make a motion to deny.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll just put
Go ahead, Joe.
my thoughts out there. I'm pretty sympathetic to this application. About the only thing holding me back is the fairness issue with the building eligibilities, and I think we could probably come up with some other scenarios around the county that are somewhat similarly situated, and the only thing holding them back from an expansion is the lack of more building eligibilities, and that's kind of the way we've designed the system. So I'm sympathetic to that kind of principled feeling toward it as well. I think this one, this is actually the neighborhood we've spent some time on tonight. I know some familiar faces in the audience stayed back that live in this area. I think if I could describe this area of our community, I would call it rural residential. You know, there's a lot of folks that live out there that have a passion for their community out there. So what definition do we go by? Obviously, this is a rezoning to rural residential. It isn't that already, but at some point, does the character of the community and some of the other homes just to the northwest of this, does it take on a character of residential that gives the lie to a more extreme example of do we just use 1 or 2 building eligibilities on 40 acres and then try to backdoor our way into 40 lots? So I think this is, whichever way we go on this, I think this is going to be not necessarily a precedent for a slippery slope, but a nice precedent for our conversations on the comprehensive plan. Where is our residential growth in the future? So kind of taking it apart from this one in particular, I've kind of come down to trying to give some guiding principles to developers. If not here, then where? I think we have to be able to say yes somewhere. And so I respect anybody that has the opinion of maybe saying no to this particular one and continuing to take it on a case-by-case basis. I think this one has some inherent limiting principles to it that I'm leaning towards support. I'd be interested in the rest of my colleagues' comments. But I guess that's just where my head is at on this one. And I would, again, give the sentiment too on the, as we talk about a housing shortage and housing inflation of costs, I think that's largely a supply side problem. So again, we're going to have to find some place to either modify some of the concepts in the comprehensive plan and find a way to find more supply side of housing. But those are my comments on this one. This is a very interesting case before us today.
Becky?
I appreciate all your comments, Joe. I probably respectfully disagree. And part of that is, part of our design, I shouldn't say design, but we're talking about appropriate land use. And one of our goals is also to preserve agriculture. And when we have every little subdivision that we have, even though it maybe doesn't take up agricultural acres, it makes it that much more difficult for agriculture to operate, whether it be combines at 10 o'clock at night, dairies, hog buildings, any of those kinds of things. It just makes it all that much more difficult for agriculture to operate. And so I think that's something that has to be considered very carefully, that even though, yes, theoretically, this wouldn't take up any more farm ground, every time we do one of these, there's more people who are, even though they signed the right to farm covenant, it doesn't always happen. And so it's that broader picture, I think, too, of then what all do we want to happen in our county?
are we all going to be residential, or are we going to also try and preserve agriculture?
And Madam Chair, if I can just respond to that point, I think that's a great point, and mitigating in my mind is the fact that there's no agricultural ground that's taken in this one. And I just raise again kind of a paradox of, and again, I'm new to this, so you guys are teaching me something new every month. This is a lot of fun, learning a lot. But again, this paradox of, in some ways, our comprehensive plan would look more favorably upon this if we truly could zone it very densely. And so it's almost like the petitioner is penalized that it doesn't lay out very well to add much new. But then your argument is still a valid one, that the more dense we get out in a rural area, the more burden it puts on agriculture. So I think we've just got a kind of a clash of urban versus rural that is going to go throughout our county. And again, back to needing some comprehensive approach. And I can see how staff's recommendation is probably a valid recommendation under our existing comprehensive plan, that this one has some arguments against it. I would definitely acknowledge that. So I appreciate your thoughts, Becky.
Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to do a roll call vote on this one. I have a motion and a second for the rezoning of 23-06, and this is to deny this rezoning. We'll start with Ryan.
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Becky?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Joe?
No.
Okay. This item has been denied. Any other old business?
I guess I'll just, I will just inform the Planning Commission that we had, from our last month's meeting, 2 items appealed. They were at last Tuesday's meeting. Chairperson Duffy attended, Bonnie attended. The County Commission upheld your decisions. One was in regard to the gun club, the Garrettson Gun Club. We had a lot of discussion about that, and the County Commission upheld the decision that you made on that recall. And then the other one was the Mueller pallet, and as you heard, that item was continued to November 7th. And I think we'll wait to see what happens with that. So those were the 2 items from last that were appealed. So that's all.
No new business, no old business. Okay. Need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone.
That's way off.
Thank goodness.